Well, good morning, everybody. So this is my second attempt at making my own cake, for crying out loud, if you can believe it. And yesterday I posted some images and did 3 edits on my post because something was very wrong. First of all, my cakes came out just horribly. They were overheated, and so they overflowed, and I think I filled them too much. Anyway, long story short, take 2. Here we are. Went back to my original recipe this morning, and lo and behold, I had muffed it seriously. And so I've put everything together because I really wanted to make up for that terrible post yesterday. So you're going to bear with me, I hope, as I go through this. So the first thing that I do is I put my sugar, my oil, and my molasses. And so we're talking about 1.5 cups of regular oil, like can be canola oil, vegetable oil, just doesn't have to be expensive ingredients here. And then I use robust molasses. So this container is 12 ounces, and I have scaled this recipe to match the size of the container. I really hate having little piddly bits of things left over, so I like to make things work as best I can and not spend my time trying to find other uses for 4 ounces at a time of molasses. So this is a pretty decent molasses. It's called Grandma's. It's robust. I like that flavor profile, especially with this cake, because this is such a simplistic cake that it really benefits from that, the acidity of the molasses. So there we go. That's 12 ounces of oil, 12 ounces of molasses, and then we have 1.5 cups of white granulated sugar. And I'm going to put the top on this is my Bosch. I've had this thing forever. It's going to be a little bit loud. It takes 3 eggs for this, and I'm going to set them aside. So you're going to blend this again, and I'm actually going to pass it through a sieve because, again, I always hate surprises. And I don't like getting any shell in my cakes. And having worked for a lot of Jewish families, I also don't like to end up with any blood in my eggs, which has happened from time to time. So I'm making a little bit of a mess with this, but I want to get this through here because actually I had no blood, I had no shell, but I'm just trying to show you. I also kind of like taking out that the embryo, or what would be the embryo, I guess, and that ends up coming out when I do this. You can see it's stuck to the sieve, and I don't know, it's not a big deal. I grew up with chickens, and I can recall from a very young age, having to deal with them. Looks like I've got one yolk that escaped. Yeah, we're good. That one's clean. So I had an experience once, again, excuse the noise, where my dad had brought home pheasant eggs. He had apparently shot a pheasant and it was nesting. And he was a really, really, conscientious hunter. And so he decided he couldn't leave those eggs alone. So he brought them home and he decided to hatch them. And he actually hatched, we had about, 8, 10, 12 pheasants, baby pheasants, chicks running around our bathtub for a long time. But before we got to that point, as he was trying to hatch them, one of them was struggling, and he was trying to help it hatch, and it was stuck to its shell. So he called out to me, "Shannon, go get me the scissors." And I, having grown up chopping the heads off of chickens, could not bring myself to bring him a pair of scissors to cut the head off of this little chick. And so he's screaming at me, "Get me the scissors, get me the scissors." And I'm like, "No, Daddy, no." And I'm thinking he's going to cut its head off. Well, finally I brought him the scissors, against my protestations. And he takes it and he snips the umbilical cord from the chick to save its life. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, he's not such a you know what after all. So anyway, the things that you learn, you know, but yet we'll chop the head off of a chicken. I'm going to scrape down the sides here, make sure I got all of that egg well distributed. And then what we're going to do is we're going to sift our dry ingredients together. And I do this because you always end up with some clumps of something. And in your cake batter, the last thing you want is a clump of whatever it is. So I'm going to set aside my baking soda because that's really important. And I'm also going to get my water going here because you have to have very hot water for this process. Because it activates the baking soda. So I'm going to get that heating over on my stovetop. And in the meanwhile, we're going to start sifting this together. Let me grab a cup to help me in this. So I'm using a gluten-free flour. That's not how this recipe started out. This recipe started out with just regular flour. I'm using Krusteaz gluten-free 1-to-1. We've really come very far with gluten-free. My client, although not celiac, does have a sensitivity to gluten, so I'm trying to make her happy, which is why I can get away with using the pan that I am, which has been used in the past for wheat-based cake mixtures, batters, and otherwise I'd probably buy a whole new cake pan for her. But anyhow, so this is my cinnamon, and this is my ginger, which has just been ground. I took whole dried ginger, and there's there's 1.5 tablespoons of ginger, 3 teaspoons of cinnamon, and then we're going to do some cloves. And what I think is really funny is this cake went to the Food Network, and I am sifting these cloves. I just ground these. I only need about 1/2 teaspoon, but I'll have a little bit extra here. And the thing that I think is really amusing is that when this recipe went to Food Network, I mean, it's Food Network, okay? It's TV. It's food TV. This is 1/4 teaspoon. I'm going to do just a little bit more. Well, I guess that would be 1/2, right? And just a smidge more. Food TV is food TV, let's face it. And my husband and I went there and we had a great time, and my recipe was like, I don't know, my flour. So you see these little bits and stuff. There's some flour that's, you know, I don't know, hardened or whatever. A couple larger pieces of the ginger. I'm going to take those out. And then I'm going to continue to sift, and I'm going to add in all of the other ingredients that go into this cake mixture, into the batter. This is the dry ingredients. I think it's really super helpful to do this. So anyway, we go to the competition in San Andreas, California, at their studio. And I think if Susan is watching this, she will be able to tell you. She was in the audience, and it was rather amusing. So the people who were the celebrities of it were Guy Fieri and Mark Summers. And I had all of these, see, look, see? And so when they posted my recipe on the internet, they weren't very careful about how they transcribed. Talk about transcribing errors. They posted fresh ginger instead of freshly ground dried ginger. So you know what? I left it because it really was a bit of a sham. If anybody ever wants to know about it, I'd be happy to talk about it at some point. It's a long story, but it really is food TV. So, you know, basically the cake that won was a chocolate cake off the back of a Hershey box, and we'll leave it at that. But this is a very unique cake. It was based on an 18th or 17th, 18th or 19th century inspiration, using the hot water and baking soda as leavening. And I'm going to put this flour into my bowl. I'm going to add it a little bit at a time, about half at a time, just to make sure that it gets mixed well. I'm going to put my lid back on because it has a tendency to poof. And then, okay, and then I'll add the rest. So yeah, now this cake batter is right. So yesterday when I was making my cake, I kept thinking, oh my God, it's so watery. Well, I was short by 1.5 cups of flour. And the cake actually tasted delicious, but it was so airy that it would not hold up. So now I'm going to add my baking soda, which here we have 1.5 tablespoons of baking soda, to my water. And I'm going to stir that. And it was a fun experience. We had a great time. I got to talk to some neat people, but just know, if you ever do any food TV, it really is just food TV. Don't ever get serious about it unless you want to spend your life bending over backwards to make people look good and not necessarily yourself. Okay, so I'm going to scrape this down. This is a Bosch stand mixer. I've had this thing, I don't know, 25, 30 years or something. They still make parts for it, like accoutrements, additional items like this. So I've got the sausage maker, and there's a couple other things I still want to get, and I had totally forgot. And at one point I had put this thing away when we moved and forgot that I had it. And long story short, I realized when one of my other pieces of equipment, a food processor, had died, that I should check it out. And you know, they still have the same add-ons that you can get. So I have like the sausage maker, you can get a pasta maker, you can get all kinds of things. And I'm starting at a new kitchen shop in a few weeks in the new year, and they have a couple of really amazing items, like I'm going to butcher the name of it because I can't pronounce it, Arkarsham stand mixer, which puts this one to shame. I actually have seen a video of it pulling an airplane. Pulling an airplane, like no joke. The motor is so powerful. And I mean, if you do any kind of baking like I do, especially if you're a bread baker, you've got to be able to have something with some power. So anyway, so let me grab my pan. So here's my pan, and as you can see, this is a very complicated pan. I have used a commercial spray, which, here, I'm going to grab this over here. So I'm going to try this one today. And I'm going to use some flour. So this is my commercial spray. It has lecithin in it, which is derived from eggs. Now this might be a chemical form of lecithin. This is soy only. Soy lecithin. So egg lecithin is what they used in historically as an anti-sticking agent. And I discovered this while I was working with recipes for goulash wafers, which is a wafer used in Ottoman cooking, dessert, that's layered with nuts and soaked in syrup. And now I'm gonna coat this pan with some flour like you would any other, you know, coatable thing. because this pan is notorious for sticking. And I know that it'll probably result in some white on the cake itself, but this cake gets doused with a brandy sauce, which I will demonstrate later on, and it won't make a difference. It'll end up, oh my goodness, I'm sure you're like, too much noise. It took a lot of that flour to really coat this pan, and I'm going to continue to make sure, because I struggled desperately yesterday to get this thing so there's some of the extra. All right, and now we're going to take the batter. I'm going to take my paddles out, and there are several kinds of paddles for these. This one is for basically blending batters. There is one for whipping, if you were doing like whipping cream or creaming sugar and oil, or sugar and butter or something like that. And I'm just going to blend this again to make sure that everything is well incorporated, but you don't want to overbeat it. And that was one of the things that the judges hung their hat on in my criticism of my cake, was that I overbeat it. And we found that to be hilarious, because the whole scenario that happened with that cake was that they sent somebody out when I was preparing it to film it. And they told me the excuse was that they wanted to have extra footage for the show. Well, really what they were doing was the judges wanted something to be able to hang their hats on. So they filmed me preparing the cake, and I was, trying to like be a showman, and, really what I should have done, just concentrated on my cake. But we had very scant ingredients. We had to bring everything we needed. And so after I finished making the cake on this filming, I look down and I see my salt sitting there, and I'm like, oh my God. And this is the cake they're going to eat, right? And I'm like, you cannot do a cake without the salt. So the cameraman had already left, and my cake was in the oven. So I ended up giving the cake away when it was done, and everybody loved it anyway. But I remade the cake, and I was so careful, so careful to not overbeat it and to not do anything wrong. I'm going to use the word cake Nazi. Hopefully Facebook doesn't, ban my post because of this. But essentially, I'm being one again today, because I can't risk remaking this for yet another third time. So anyway, when they judged my cake, and I'm going to, this is a 18 serving recipe here that I'm pouring in here. I forget where I was at. Anyway, I'm being extra careful about my cake because I don't want it to fail again. So I'm coming close to the end of where I'm comfortable filling. I think that's about it. The rest I'll probably just pour it into a cupcake mold and give it to a friend or something like that. The problem with this cake mold is that, you know what? I'm actually going to do the rest. It's very hard to judge, and it's been a while since I've used this mold. So, yeah, this will be fine. This isn't going to make me or break me. The other thing that I had done wrong yesterday when I was baking the cake, as a result, it reacted very quickly and it overflowed. And so there we go. I'm going to let this sit. I'm going to let some of the bubbles work its way out of here. And then I'm going to bake it for, about 45 minutes to an hour. I'm gonna really test it every step of the way. Once I get to about 40 minutes, I'll start testing it. And hopefully we have success, and I'll post some pictures later on. Thanks for sticking with me.